Hello everyone. You're very welcome to this Expert on Air live session. My name is Vanessa. I'm going to be your expert in this session. And I also want to introduce the team, which is confirmed by Keisha. She's an IDBx staff and she's based in Barbados. And she was just saying that she has a beach in front of her window. So she's looking at the beach. Can you believe that? Okay. Fernanda, she's not so lucky. She's in DC and she's going to help us to manage this show. As I said, my name is Vanessa and I'm from Spain, and in fact I live in Madrid. Okay, so let's start. Let's go to the statistics we have for this beginning of this program. Fernanda, could you? Okay. Here it comes. Yes. Oh, no. Yes. Well, it wouldn't be a live session if we didn't have any problem, right? So here are our technical problems. I can see myself very well, but there is no statistics to read. Let's see if they come alive. Okay, as I see that we have some problems to share the slides, I'm just going to read them from my computer so that we know who is here with us. Okay, so we have 4,376 participants registered in this course. Age, 34, very young. 171 different countries, and what are the top countries represented in this MOOC course? The USA, first one, Jamaica, second one, Trinidad and Tobago, third one, Barbados, fourth one, Belize, and we also have, this slide is weird to be written, but okay. We also have people from Mexico, Colombia, and probably more countries. Okay, let's go with the questions. By the way, we got a lot of questions, but all of them were very interesting. So we decided to try to answer all of them. Instead of picking some of them, we tried to go through all of them. This is the reason why I'm going to try to be very specific. I'm going to really try to go to the main points, and you can read on these slides the most important information I want to share with you about all the questions. Let's go and read the first question aloud so that everyone is on the same page. Question number 1. Many NGOs approach sponsors for funding. These sponsors often require a project proposal or project charter. What are some tips that can assist these NGOs? When preparing a project charter for sponsorship, or will a separate sponsorship document be prepared? Okay, not all NGOs, not all financing institutions call their first proposal a project charter, but at the end it's more or less the same information, the one that that's going to contain, that we're going to try to explain in a first proposal. So yes, the project charter is most of the times the project proposal. And what would be my tips for these NGOs to apply for sponsorships? Well, first of all, to be aligned with the NGO you are applying for sponsorship. And aligned to what? Strategic alignment. It means that you're going to look at their strategic plan and you're going to see what is very important for them to work in. Sector and geographical alignment is also very important. So the idea is, what do they want to finance? What do they think it's their main priority? And if it's the same one as the one that you are proposing on your project, then you'll probably get the sponsorship. Second, integration of gender, climate change, and human rights approaches. Those are those horizontal priorities that we call them. Those are very important for all financing institutions. So it's very important for you to talk or to explain on your project charter how are you going to integrate gender, climate change, and human rights approach. And a third very important tip that I would give you, it's not to put your administration cost over 10%. There are some donors or some financing institutions that allowed a little bit higher than 10%. IDB does, for example. You can go up to 18%. Also, some organizations in the United Nations system allowed to go over 10%. But if you can adjust to 10% would be great. Next question. Okay, question number 2. This one got 24 votes. And the question is there a way to build in the project charter the project cost flexibility in case real costs are much higher than originally planned? Okay. So, in theory, you can see that in the next slide. In theory, your project charter, everyone knows that when you are writing the project charter, you are allowed to deviate your cost on at least 25%. So when you present your project charter, the organization should read your budget just as a proxy and should agree to go over 25% of your budget, of the budget you're asking for, if you need it. But in real life, what you're going to find is that the budget that you ask for on your project charter is going to be the maximum budget you're going to get from that organization. So what I would do is for you to add budget buffers when you are making your first budget. Include always a contingency reserve. Include also a management reserve. I know that probably in this moment you don't know the difference between a contingency reserve and a management reserve, but believe me, when you get to the cost chapter, you're gonna know it. So we'll come back to these 2 different reserves, budget reserves, in about 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, and the fourth consideration I would give you is to include in your project charter your high-level cost risks. So if you know that there is a product or that there is a fact outside in the market that is gonna be a risk related to your cost in this project, you can include that information. It would be good to include that information in your project charter. Okay, let's go to question number 3. Question number 3. I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but I saw 2 versions of the SMART model in this module. One with agreed and another one with achievable, for the letter A in the acronym. Is it the same? No, it's not the same. And you know what? I've seen, I don't know, maybe 10 different versions of the SMART acronym. What is important here is that it depends on the other letters. So if you are using the R for realistic, then you can very well use the letter A for approved, agreed upon, or different words saying exactly the same concept. The same happens with realistic and relevant. So if you decide that you're going to use relevant for the R, if you are the author, right? So you are writing down an essay talking about how to write a good objective, and you decide to use the SMART acronym. Okay, then you say, okay, what's really important about writing a very good objective? Well, there are a lot of things very important, and there are different ways to use those letters in this acronym. The most important thing is that if you're going to use the R for relevant, then it's very good to use the A for achievable. Otherwise, you're not going to have the concept, the very centric and important concept that a project needs to be realistic or achievable in terms of scope, time, and cost. So if you're going to use the R for relevant, I would use the A for achievable. If you're going to use the R for realistic, you can use the A for approved. Same thing happens with the T. Probably the most common use for the T is time-bound. But traceable, it's a very, very centric and very important condition to describe, to well describe or well write an objective. And traceable means that it is achievable through the scope. You see, traceable means that when you look at the objective, you can see all the products helping you to achieve that objective. Does it mean that, does all this mean that an objective doesn't need to be approved? Does it need to be agreed upon? Of course it does. The SMART acronym helps us to well describe or write an objective. Does it mean that with those letters we are defining the whole condition for an objective to be perfectly written down? No, there are more things. But it helps us to do the basics. So the most important thing related to this question, if you're going to use realistic for the R, you can use approved. But if you're not going to use realistic for the R, and maybe you're going to use relevant because you want to relate it more to the strategic goals of an organization, then you really need to use achievable for the A. Next question. Okay, question number 4. How can an officer who is not directly involved in project development ensure that a project charter becomes a reference document for an organization? Again, here I wasn't sure if I understood what you mean, because it depends on who's that officer. So if you are talking about the template or the process, so how do you make sure that your organization is going to use this process to develop a project charter as part of the processes that are set in an organization. Then, if that's your goal, then this officer needs to be part of a PMO or part of the Organizational Development Office. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to get the project charter as, let's say, an official process output. If you meant that how can you make this project charter as a proposal document for a particular project, a reference document, then the answer is you need to do it through the sponsor. If you're not, even if you are part of the team developing the project, the only way to introduce this project charter as a reference document in an organization is going to be through the sponsor, because the sponsor is going to be this high-level person that it's going to champion and get your project charter to be approved. Answer. Okay, let's go to question number 5 then. Okay, here it is. Question 5. Is there a difference between a project charter and a project proposal? No. There may be differences between project charters and project proposals depending on the organization. Of course, the content is not always going to be the same one, but project charter is just the name that PMI gave to the project proposal concept. So the concept behind the word project charter is project proposal. In fact, as you'll see later on, in IDB we call it project proposal. I see Fernanda is telling us that she's very sorry for the delay. There are some technical difficulties. Well, it's going okay, don't worry. Okay, question 6. Project charter is considered very helpful. Oh yeah, I remember this question. It's considered very helpful in IT-based projects. Is this also part of ISO certification for IT companies, or is it part of any standard certifications in IT? Okay, I'm here. I must tell you that even if I am a certified expert in project management, I have nothing to do with IT. So it's not a very easy question to answer for me. I'm going to try to help you a little bit related to this question by saying that project charter is a concept defined by the PMI, right? Project Management Institute. The Project Management Institute published a book called PMBOK, and the PMBOK is the standard, the recognized American national standard for project management. So, in the States, any project, if even an IT project that wants to be managed by using national American standard, will use and will apply those processes and will define a project chapter. Yes. But that doesn't mean that for IT certification, project charter is a standard. That I don't know. I'm not from that industry. In fact, I am from the development industry. I studied political science. So I'm not going to be much of a help there. But what I wanted to use this answer for is to tell you that in the States, this standard, the project management standard, it's the ISO quality standard for project management. Next question. Okay, question number 7. So in the Haiti's case study, we had a project organization chart showing the titles of each project team member. Should this chart include the names of each member involved or the titles only in case that one of those members have to leave the project in the future? You are absolutely right. Jose is absolutely right. The charter should always include the title because people leave, right? People change, and you're not going to change a version of a, like, let's say, formal document just because someone left. So yes, always the title, you're right. But sometimes the name helps. So if you want to include both, it's fine. If you just want to include one, it's always the title. So Jose is absolutely right on his remark. Thank you. Question number 8. Is it possible to write the project charter in such a way as to avoid bureaucracy, secrecy from government institutions down the road when implementing the project? That question made me laugh. And the answer is yes and no. So a way to try to avoid bureaucracy is through the definition of the integrated change control system. So the integrated change control system, you learn this concept in following sessions, but it's the way where you say how things are going to be changed in this project. So if you make a very bureaucratic system to change things, let's say you want to change a product because you don't want you think that you don't need the product anymore in order to achieve your goals, and you have to go, you have to get this required. So you need to go to an assembly sometimes, or to someone in particular to ask for that change to be approved, right? When you design this process, it's called the integrated control change control system. You are the one defining this control system when you are designing the project charter. If you define a very complex changing control system, you're gonna go absolutely every time into bureaucracy, and your implementation is gonna be anything but agile. So I would suggest, if you are really concerned about getting into bureaucracy, to try to design an agile and efficient control system. But to tell you the truth, the control system needs to reflect the reality in your organization. So the control system needs to be very aligned with how decisions are made in your organization. So even if you want to escape from bureaucracy, if your organization is a very bureaucratic one, your project is going to find the same obstacles, and doesn't matter what your project charter says. Question number 9. What is the next step after project charter has been developed? Okay, so after being developed, it needs to be approved. So first step, approval. When you have your project charter approved, then a PM box says you start with your planning process. But in between, somewhere in between, if you're lucky and you have a budget, you need to assign or hire a PM. Why? Because, and this is very important, and we're going to go through it again afterwards, because from the beginning, it's going to be very important to have your project manager assigned to the planning process. So what I would do, if I could do whatever I wanted to, which never happens, but if I could, just right away after having my project charter approved, first thing I would do, hiring or having assigned a project manager. And with him or her, I would start the planning process. Next slide. Okay, question number 10. What is the most useful and easy to understand book on project management? I'd like something I can pick up and start using right away, preferably with templates. Okay, so I have two recommendations for you. You're going to see them in these slides. You have I've included the link to PMI store. You're going to see it in a second. So PMI has a web page for those of you who don't know, and a marketplace there. If you go through this link to PMI store, you're going to find a lot of books there. But I also wanted to share with you the book that was my favorite one when I was studying, when I was doing my degree in project management, which is this one, Fast Forward MBA in Project Management by Eric Berthoud. This is very easy to read, very complete, very, let's say, friendly written book that I highly recommend to all of you. Next one. Okay, question number 11 from unknown. Oh, okay, anonymous. Is the project charter more effective in different regions and industries? Okay, well, it shouldn't be. That's the answer, because the project charter is just the output of a very important process to start a project. So it shouldn't be, but again, reality check. Project charter is a process that was very well described and defined by PMI. PMI is very popular, very well known, and applied in the States, also in Europe. It begins to be really popular also in Latin America, but it's not so popular, for example, in Africa or in Northern Europe also. They have different standards in Northern Europe. So it does apply to all industries and regions, yes. It could be used, yes. It is used equally in all regions and all industries, no. As someone said before, IT industry uses PMI or PMBOK standard very frequently. Almost all companies use it. It's especially the agile version of the PMBOK. And there are other industries where, well, the PMBOK is not so well known and so used. So it depends, but it could be used, yes. Next question. Okay, question number 12. I understand that results matrix is used as preparation for the project charter, but is it a preliminary results matrix? The question is because usually the results matrix includes physical and financial planning, and I feel this stage comes after the project charter, or should be before? This is a question from Luisa. I'm pretty sure that Luisa works in development, as I do, because results matrix, it's a very development industry tool. Okay, and here's the answer. Everything in a project charter is preliminary. Everything. You're gonna come back to your objective definition. You're gonna come back to your strategy definition. You're gonna come back to the integrated change control system. You're gonna come back to everything, because the project charter is just for a first look to your planning process. But what is very important is that everything that you want your project to highlight, like the most important things that you want to share with your stakeholders, need to be in your project charter. So everything is preliminary, but everything written down in a project charter is very, very important. Why? Because you're selling your project with your project charter. Your project charter is the document that is going to get you your sponsorship, that's going to get your stakeholders to be close to you and either to help you or to begin an adverse campaign against your project. So whatever you describe in your project charter, it's key, but it's preliminary. Next question. Question number 13. Do we have to include indirect beneficiaries of the project in the project charter? Okay, only, this is very important question also. They're all really, really good, because all those questions made me go to reality, made me go to the field. Very good, very nice questions. Okay, are you including your indirect beneficiaries only if those beneficiaries, those indirect beneficiaries, are stakeholders of your project? And here comes a very important distinction. What are stakeholders? Or what's the difference between indirect beneficiaries or beneficiaries and stakeholders? Well, the stakeholders are those beneficiaries, or direct or indirect, but those who you're gonna manage. So if you include them, it means that you're gonna design a strategy to manage their expectations. Why? Because they matter. They matter to your project. You need to manage their expectations in order to be sure that your project is going to be successful. If you're not going to manage their expectations, even if they are indirect beneficiaries of your project, then no, you don't need to include them in your project charter. Yes? Okay. Next question then. Question number 14. How do you deal with too many objectives? What if you can't get the consensus? Do you just add another objective? Okay, this only question could give me material to teach for 1 hour, only talking about what are too many objectives, and only about objectives, only about the concept of an objective, I could talk for 2 hours. So I'm gonna just try to say some very, very important ideas. Let's see if we can read the answers so that you can follow me through the answers, because I know I have an accent, pretty clear one, right? So I think it's better if you listen to me, but you can read also what I'm talking about. So, very important thing. One project has one objective, and only one objective. And this is very important. One program has one program objective and multiple project objectives. One portfolio has has one strategic objective and multiple program and or project objectives. Why is this so important? Because even if at this very preliminary stage of your planning process, which is the project charter, it's not even theoretically, it's not even included in the planning processes, right? It's just how do you start a project. Wherever it is placed as a process in your head, when you make your project charter, it means that you have started your planning process. Okay, so in this very, very preliminary stage, maybe you don't know what is strategy and what is objective. So maybe you're not very sure if something is a result that you expect to get, if something is an objective. So it's okay to have many objectives at this time, but your next process is going to be a planning process, and it's going to be the scope planning process. And there you have to decide whether your objective is a real objective or if it's a result that you need to achieve in order to get closer to your objective. I wanted to share with you an image. Let's see if we can look at the next slide. You're going to see it's a real one. It's a WBS from, in fact, a real project at IDB. Okay, yes, there was, before the image, I wanted also to share an important concept with you, which is called, well, it's defining the scope process. And what is defining the scope? When you define your scope, what you are doing is that you are saying everything you need to do or you need to get, and only what you need to do or to get in order to achieve your project objective. So this, everything I need to do, but only what I need to do is related to your question about the objectives. We cannot have too many objectives. At the end of the planning process or the scope planning process, you really need to have one objective if you have a project, and you need to define what results, or sometimes they are called intermediate objectives, you need to define in order to get your final objective, which is your project objective. And here the image, here we can use the image. I don't know if you can see it now. Can you see the image? Okay, yeah, here it comes. Okay, so this is the WBS, which is how we design the scope. This is going to come later on in the course, so I'm not going to go into details. But as you can see, we have at the top of the image, we have our project objective. Only one, because we can only have one. And then we have 3 results that are also going to be included in our results matrix. And what we are saying here is that once we get those 3 results, we'll be able to achieve our project objective. This is how you read a WBS. So all the little green cases that you see are our products, and with those products we'll get our results, and with our 3 results in this case we'll be able to achieve our project objective. Yes, this is going a little further. This will come after probably in next week. We're gonna meet again and we'll look into this this planning process, which is called defining the scope, and it is very related to your question about objectives. Okay, let's go on. Let's go to the next question. Okay, question number 15. If I am planning to start a new project and I want a new sponsor, what is the best strategy to get more or another sponsor? How do I fund my project cost and get financial resources? Okay, how do I get a sponsor? How do I get a project to be approved, including, of course, a budget to be able to execute it? Well, you know how you always have to think, why would they be interested in financing or sponsoring this project? What is their job? What are their interests? And if your project is aligned to that interest, then that's your sponsor. That's the person you should, or the organization you should address to and ask for sponsorship. But if you cannot answer your question related to their interest, not your interest, not the interest of the project, but their interest, then don't go there, because probably you won't get the fund. Next question. Question number 16. Kindly clarify the extent to which the project chapter contributes to planning the project and what degree the project manager is expected to contribute to planning. This is a question from Lumumba. Okay. The project charter contributes a lot to your planning process because it's one of your most important inputs. So when you start your planning process, first thing you have to do, you have to get your project charter and say, okay, what did I say here about my project? And you start developing your project charter. In fact, each and every planning process is going to be a development of what you already stated in your project charter. In your project charter, you're going to just talk about roughly a timeline. You're going to say, okay, maybe this project is going to last 6 months. Well, what you're going to do in your planning process when you talk about scheduling is you're going to take this, what you said, this piece of information from your project charter. I said 6 months. Okay, let's look at these 6 months in detail. So your project charter is going to be the input to your planning process, probably one of the most, I would even say, the most important input to your planning process. Because it's your commitment. You committed to it. That's why it was approved. You said, this is my project. And people believed it. So you really have to stick to the information you introduced in your project charter. And related to the second part of this question, ideally, and it's very important, your project manager should fully be involved in the planning process from the beginning. And that's very important because otherwise you're gonna lose a lot of time when you get your project manager on board. Next question, please. Question number 17. Is it usual for a funding body, let's say IDB, to be considered a sponsor? Yes, it is. In IDB, there are different roles. There is one, which is, we call it team leader. And the team leader is the sponsor of the project. And it's he or she are going to play that role seriously. I mean, they really sponsor the project within IDB. Does this kind of sponsor participate in the project charter creation or approbation? Yes, of course, yes. They are responsible to supervise the quality of the project charter, yes. please talk a little bit about how IDB usually gets involved in different size parts of the project. Okay, let's go to the answer slide for this question, because I've pasted a link to a page, to a web page from IDB, where you can read in detail how is this process done at IDB. What I'm just gonna say is that when we talk about planning projects, as I said before, we use the project profile name. We say project profile to identify the project chapter. So here at this link, you'll find all the information about this process. So how projects are proposed, how are they approved in this very preliminary stage, what comes after that, what sort of documents do we approve during the planning process, and everything. Next question. Oh, I have to talk quicker because it's already 8:45. Well, I'm in Spain, so it's 8:45. There it's going to be 4:45. Okay, let's see if the next question comes alive. Yes, question number 18. Please explain whether there is a disparity or distinction between the positions listed as comprising the project management executive unit in page 7 from the PM for results document, or the project team diagram in page number 17 of the same document. Okay. What I want to say here is that in this, in the PM for results guide and all the documents that you'll find in related to PM for results, we use two different languages. We use IDB language and we mixed it with a PMI language. So, executive unit is an IDB word. It's not a PMI word. The executive unit is the part of the beneficiary institution that has responsibility to execute the loan. But that's only for, well, not only for, but that's particularly for IDB loans. Project team is a word from PMI standard. Most of the time, the executive unit is the project team, but not always. It depends on the project, and it depends on the institutions that are related to the execution or the implementation of that project. So sometimes we can find an executive unit, and that is different in for some elements, for some people are included in the project team, and they are not part of the executive unit, and some of the executive unit, some of the staff from the executive unit are not included in the project team. So it depends, but what is important here is to say, to clarify, that executive unit is an IDB word. Usually that's the project team, but not always. And project team is a PMI standard word. Okay, we can go to the next question. Okay, so we have a live question now. Question number 1 from Miguel, following on from question 8 about the control system and bureaucracy. Is it possible to change a project charter once it's approved? Yes, it is. Everything can be changed if you go through the right system. So in this case, to change the project charter, you should go through the integrated control system, and you could change it, of course. Can it be adjusted, specifically the structure of governance, to comply with donors' requirements or other factors that has changed? Well, once you start execution, you don't usually go back to the project charter. Why? Because during your planning process, you've developed your project execution plan. And your project execution plan, it's like a very long, very detailed project charter. So you don't go back to the project charter again and change things there. You change them in your project execution plan. Every time things change, in fact, in your project, you should go back to your project execution plan and change it. If we want to use PMI words, we would say project management plan. That's the standard word for this project execution plan, which is exactly the same thing. So it's a very long plan that develops what you already stated in your project charter for every project management area. So for scope, for schedule, for cost, for risk, for quality, for everything. Okay. Next live question. Okay. In my experience, I find that the governance structure is the part that is missing in designing a project, and this has affected the decision-making process due to lack of information on responsibilities and level of authority. How do you recommend to address this matter, and that there is not a conflict between the responsibilities assigned in the project charter and in job descriptions of project team members? Okay, very important, yes. So in your project charter, you're just gonna state how the project is gonna be managed at high level. So who's gonna decide on changes, for example? Who's gonna approve products? When you start your planning process, there is a very important area that's called governance and stakeholders expectation management. There you need to address the time and the effort needed to explain in a very detailed way how are gonna be the politics, let's say, of this project, who's gonna decide on what, and who's gonna do what related to governance. There is another area called human resources, where you assign roles and responsibilities. In fact, in this course, if I'm not mistaken, because I teach different courses and I don't want to make a mistake, but I would say that in this course you're going to see at the end a very nice, easy to use tool which is called roles and responsibility matrix, and it helps a lot to define who's going to do what related to the products of your project. So probably not enough related to governance and responsibilities assignments during the defining the project charter process, but you have big important areas to plan during your planning process related to that. And the next live question. Question 3 from Andrea. In question 12, the results matrix was mentioned as being an important input for the project charter preparation. When and how is the results matrix developed? This was not mentioned during the course. Okay, you know why this was not mentioned? Because the results matrix is a very IDB tool. In fact, you're not going to see any mention of it in the PMBOK or the PMI methodology. When it is developed, it's developed during the planning process, but as it is an input to your project charter, you're going to develop a preliminary results matrix just after you get the information from the assessment. So the important thing about the results matrix is that it should be an output of the first requirement gathering process. When you start trying to identify what's going on, why do we need to do a project related to this community or this sector or these needs? So when you start gathering the information related to the needs in your assessment, just after that, you need to develop your results matrix, because in your results matrix, what you're going to say is that this is the reality I found, and this is how this reality is going to look after the project. That's the information, the piece of information which you're going to show in your results matrix. But this one is going to develop a lot during your planning process. Okay, so Keisha is telling me that the World Bank has great documents related to this, to assessments and to how do you define your results matrix. And she's gonna link, copy a link to I guess it's a World Bank document. She's gonna just show it to you on the next slide. And as I can see, it's they're going to give you in this web page some resources on how to design results framework. While we wait until we have this information on the screen, I want to underline again that your results matrix should be the output from your assessment process. So between your assessment process and the moment when you start doing your planning process, or when you start designing your project, the link between those two phases, between the assessment and your first design, should be a preliminary results matrix. Okay, here you can see the web page that, it's a PDF document where you can read and find some resources related to designing the results matrix, which they call in a very general way a results framework. Okay, so we have to finish. We have to close this first live session. I thank you very, very much having you here with me. I thank you very much, your questions, very interesting. And I'm just going to ask you to come back and send more questions during this next week. And we'll see each other again on the next session, which is going to be on July 20th. Yes? Okay, so just please add some new questions so that I can start working on them during this week, and enjoy your weekend.